So I'm a big RPG fan. I love Dragon Age specifically, and I've been excited to play Dragon Age: The Veilguard, the new Dragon Age game. By new, I mean it's like a year old, so that's pretty typical for me. But I was planning to build a new gaming computer because like my computer is kind of like pre-gen, like it's like right before that game came out, and it's really it can play it, but like it's not fun. It doesn't work good. So I'm planning to build a new computer. I was working with Claude because I know nothing about building computers to see like what parts I need to get, what would make sense, what should I do, what do I not need to do, what's like the minimum, or like what's like just above the minimum, so that I can like, you know, have a system that'll work for maybe the next Dragon Age game. Fingers crossed, probably not. It had me work on PC parts picker or something like that. And we were like going back and forth, like putting the parts in there, making sure everything lined up. Whenever I sort of like told it the build that I'd put in there and the prices that it was quoting me on PC Parts Picker, it was like, hold up, the storage and RAM prices are like crazy. Like that's not what they should be. These feel very overpriced. Maybe there's something going on. And I was like, yeah, like you're going on, like you should know this. Like the AI industry has been like greatly increasing the price of like RAM and storage and like all this kind of stuff. So it did a quick search and it was like, oh yeah, that's what's going on. And it was just sort of wild because it's like, you should know this, right? But it really got me to thinking about, you know, like when is the AI bubble gonna burst? Because that's the thing we keep hearing economically. Because, you know, like if the bubble bursts, there's gonna be tons of RAM sticks that had a home that doesn't, and they're gonna be like giving them away. So like I'm sort of like waiting on that to happen so that the RAM prices can go down. So I did a little bit of like looking into articles to be like, hey, when is the bubble gonna burst? What's gonna happen? The idea of like good bubbles and bad bubbles, and it really got me in a bit of a spiral where I could sort of like find different things to look into. So I'm gonna dig into that today because I think that that's kind of interesting and will tell us a lot about like where AI is going and how the industry is going to impact not just like our economy, but our world at large. Well, anyway, my name is Terry Bartley. I'm your host. I do this show called Ink Over AI, where I just sort of like talk about the intersection between AI and tech and education and writing and all those things. And today's going to be a bit more of a tech episode. So if you're a techie person, congratulations, you stumbled onto the right episode. And if you're a writing person, maybe just check out the next episode. But if you are interested in the tech stuff, hang out, because it's going to be a fun ride. So basically what I was talking about in that article, I was talking about how Marc Andreessen and Peter Thiel was theorizing that there were good bubbles and bad bubbles. And they were sort of like saying that bubbles like the dot-com bubble or like the train bubble were good bubbles because they inspired innovation, but the bubbles like the housing market crash was like a bad bubble. That was like a thing that didn't actually lead to innovation, and it was bad. But then I thought about Elizabeth Warren's book that I read whenever she was running for president, and she talked about how like she felt like the bubble, like the boom and bust economy that we've kind of like grown accustomed to over the past 20, 30 years is like bad. Like it doesn't need to happen, and we really shouldn't expect it to like do that forever because it's not actually useful and it's not good for the American worker. What she was talking about was how like for many, many years, like for much of the 20th century, whenever there were things like union protections and pensions and, you know, like reliable insurance and healthcare and all those things like housing prices was consistent. Like those are all things that led to sort of like stability in a way where people's lives didn't constantly fluctuate between, am I going to have a retirement or not? Because my 401k is threatened by the current, you know, bust that's happening. Got me thinking about that. And especially this idea that like bubbles are whenever innovation happens, because using the logic of Warren's like thought there is that a lot of innovation happened in the 20th century. Like whenever that stability period was happening, it's sort of like whenever some of the most impactful innovation happened in the US. Because, you know, I was reading Abundance by Ezra, Klein, and Thompson, and in it, they discuss how, you know, if you look at the technology from the 90s to now, compared to like from the 90s to the like 50s or 60s, which is sort of like an equivalent time frame, it's pretty drastic, like how much things have changed from then to now versus like how much things had changed in the previous period, because they changed so much more in the previous period. You know, like things that people would have never even fathomed were being invented during that time. And I think that we get kind of confused because things like smartphones and LLMs and things like that feel super fancy and new. But the truth is, like, a ton of that technology is actually built on technologies that existed already. And that's why so many people in the tech, like, journalism industry right now are saying that innovation feels kind of dead, and innovation's kind of stagnated because there's not a lot of new technologies being developed. And there were a ton that developed during this sort of stability period that Warren was referencing. So you're like, I could have picked sort of like any technology from this 20th century period, sort of like from the Roosevelt to Reagan era, like the pre-Reagan, like right before Reagan took office. And, you know, anything from like commercial air travel to, you know, like sort of synthetics material or what, like there's tons of things that were like drastic and were created new. But I'm going to pick a couple that I think that we sort of associate with this time period, especially like the 90s to now period, because they actually weren't at all from this time, at least not the original innovation. And I feel like that's worth discussing. So I'm going to start with the internet. We all know what the internet is. You're watching this on the internet, most likely. I don't know where you would have gotten this if it's not the internet. Another Defense Department program that is very highly used now is GPS. GPS is a thing that we all use now, sort of rely on to function in our world and travel from anywhere. Sometimes I have trouble getting to a place that's 20 minutes from me, because I just don't know how to navigate without it. But that was also a Defense Department program. A GPS was invented in 1973. And then, you know, like it even goes further than that. So sort of like the core technology of smartphones are the touchscreen. Touchscreens were actually developed in the 1960s. They were developed by a man named E.A. Johnson with the British Research Institute. And like, you know, like that's what we use in sort of anything that we think of as like modern technology is something that has a touchscreen. And not just that, but also mobile phone technology was developed before the 90s. In 1973, Martin Cooper invented the mobile phone for Motorola. And like, it didn't look anything like what a modern smartphone looks like, but my point still stands that like a cell phone is basically touchscreen meets GPS meets internet meets mobile phone. These things put together was one device that was sort of like all the pieces existed already. They just put them all together. And I think why this is especially good as a sort of like rebuttal to Thiel and Andreessen's argument is that none of these technologies were developed by venture capitalists in Silicon Valley. They're all developed through like university or, you know, like defense programs or like governmental run programs or like that sort of thing. It was all like, you know, various research, publicly funded things that developed this, or something like Motorola, like a privately owned company developing their own thing. Like none of it was kind of like this VC cash that they're throwing around at things like AI or, you know, or before that, the .com bubble, things like that. So again, like AI is a thing that we think of as this brand new technology, right? Like AI is sort of in everything now. And like, I think all of us that has been alive for more than 20 years knows that like we've been using a lot of this AI technology without everybody calling it AI for quite a while now, right? Like Grammarly for a long time was AI, like it giving us grammar techniques, telling me where I need to put my commas. That was something that Grammarly was using AI for a long time. And now like they've incorporated this LLM technology and it's really not as good as it used to be. So the foundations of AI actually came from writings and research in 1943 by these people, Warren McCullough and Walter Pitts. They sort of like compiled a lot of ideas that led to what we now know as AI. And the first like sort of like AI infrastructure that we used was created by Cornell University in 1958 by a name named Frank Rosenblatt. He made the perceptron. It was kind of like the first AI technology that we saw. And even before that, the transformer architecture that we sort of like use in most AI now was developed by Google in 2017, which is like during this later period, but even so, like it's way later. And that stuff was made because of all of this prior work. Like none of that innovation could have happened without all of these like more fundamental innovations from this more stable period in our history. Venture capital didn't create AI. Venture capital just threw a lot of money at AI to make it something that we recognize today as AI. Basically what Andreessen and Thiel are arguing is primarily that like we should be willing to endure these like boom and bust economy because it leads to greater innovation. That's like their argument. That's their thesis, is that we just kind of have to live with the pain because it's worth it because of what we'll get on the other side of it. And I'm here to argue that I'm pretty sure more innovation comes from stability. like that, like sort of like post-Reagan, trickle-down economics, that was meant to make the private and like the private sector far more like innovative and take risks and do things because they had more capital than they did previously to apply to those things. And the thing is, like, I don't know that we've seen it. Not like we did before that. And so, like, it just gets me to thinking about, like, what are we sacrificing for this, like, boom and bust economy? Because it's not just stability that we're sacrificing. We are sacrificing that, but it goes deeper than that. Because, like, if AI is the thing we're getting on the other side of it, like, I'm seeing the effects in the classroom of kids relying on AI, outsourcing their thinking to it. They're forgetting how to think for themselves. And that's not a price I think we as a society should be willing to pay. And I think like the key to that is like if the younger generation is losing the ability to think for themselves and therefore the ability to innovate, then are we then creating a condition where the only innovations that could possibly happen are through AI? And that's wild. That is an insane world that we should not want to live in. Like, we should be wanting humans to create things that humans want to build a better society. Like, that's the world that we should want. And we should want to create a generation of young people who have the ability to be more innovative and think up ideas that we could not have even fathomed whenever we were their age. And I think that, like, the main point here, like, when it comes to this cost factor, is that, like, we've been seeing that, like, this VC culture where they kind of, like, prop up these tech industries whenever they're not actually profitable hasn't been useful. Like, I'm so worried that we're going to see what happens with AI. We're going to see the same thing that happened with DoorDash and Uber and those kinds of services. Because, you know, like, realistically, Uber was supposed to solve the problem of, like, public transportation, where, like, taxis, but, like, the taxi industry existed already, and it was crowded, and it was hard to get, you know, a ride sometimes, but the rates were fair and consistent. And with the introduction of Uber, they sort of, like, blew up that industry, and then they, like, ended up jacking up the price years later whenever the VC cash dried up. And like, that's not what I want to see happen, because, like, if we're going to start outsourcing our thinking to AI and we're going to start relying on AI because it's free and if there's easy access to it, then I don't want it to become so expensive then that it's like, well, I can't think without it, so I have to pay the $50 a month, the $100 a month, the $75 a month, whatever, to use this thing that is basically my brain, that my brain could do, but it's atrophied because I've not used it in so long. So I just don't feel like we have to sort of, like, obliterate industries that exist already in order to make way for a new industry. Like, we don't have to do that. And, like, AI is telling us, like, especially the AI companies are telling us that we have to do that. Like, we have to stop using, you know, labor or blue collar labor. We have to stop people, like, answering the phone for customer service or taking notes at a meeting or whatever. Like, they're trying to tell us that we don't need those things. And I just don't understand why we have to lay off people and ruin an entire sector of jobs to make way for this new technology that may or may not actually, like, help us in the long run. But yeah, like, I just wanted to talk about this because I think it's important, and I think it's something that we as a society have to be willing to reckon with, because, like, are we willing to accept this boom and bust economy? I don't think I am, because I feel like sort of like the heart of our country is having sort of like a stable way that anybody can have the chance to build something, whether that's a better life, like having access to, like, money and being able to, like, grow and help, like, your family succeed, or whether it's, like, innovation, like creating something new and creating a product that will help all of society. So, you know, like, the promise of AI, the promise that they keep telling us is that AI is going to lead to a world where we'll all be able to live comfortably. And if that's the case, shouldn't we be seeing some of those benefits now? Like, are we willing to sacrifice all of this stuff? Education, thought, you know, self-thought, a stable economy, a world where, you know, like, basic services like transportation or food delivery is affordable. If we're going to sacrifice all of those things, shouldn't we be getting something out of it? And I'm not sure what we're getting out of AI other than, like, this kind of neat thing that can help us organize our thoughts sometimes. And that's why I feel like the sort of, like, 20th century technologies I was talking about during that stability period, like those products were developed to make money. Those were things that were supposed to produce revenue. They were things that were developed to be products that people bought in stores. And like, we look at what the AI industry is doing right now. VCs are just sort of like throwing money. Data centers are getting built all over the country. Things like, gaming computers are getting so expensive to make because they're taking up all the RAM and storage. But like, none of it has any way of really making any real money. Like, if you look at, revenue calls from like OpenAI or Anthropic or whatever, like they're all sort of saying like they don't really know where profit's going to come from. And we see like OpenAI doing things like putting ads on ChatGPT or like creating like different kinds of structures so that people in the free tier will be able to get a service, but it won't be quite as good. Sort of the whole shitification of technology thing that we see happening all across the tech industry. And like we're getting to a place where like this is going to become inaccessible to us, but also like they're just not building a product. Like social media was exactly this, right? Social media never had a plan of how to make money. Like ads were a thing they sort of like developed on the fly. Facebook was meant to be a way to rate hot girls on Harvard's campus. It wasn't meant to be a way to connect to the world. That came later. And then the ad structure came later and all of these things. Like we need to get back to developing products, because I feel like until we create products that create revenue, just like we did in the 20th century, we're going to continue doing this thing where we're like chasing unicorns without any real goal. I mean, I'm a teacher, and whenever I have to set a goal for the semester, I have to do this like every year. At the beginning of the year, I have to set a goal for like my students or my teaching. I have to do a SMART goal, which if I'm sure many of you know what SMART goals are. So SMART goals are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely, as they're time-based. Basically, they need to be something that you can be very specific about. There's specific data you can pull, like measurable data to show the success rate. And I don't feel like AI is doing, like tech has gotten into this place where like actually having measurable goals are like irrelevant. Or like at least anything that's measurable to us, the consumer. And that just seems so crazy to me. Like, what are they doing? If we're going to be paying more for electric because of all these data centers, shouldn't we be getting something that we can purchase on the back end so to make it worth our time? So yeah, I just wanted to talk about this because I think that it's something for us to think about. Like, if we are being asked to sacrifice all of these things, shouldn't we be getting at least a fraction of what they're promising us? Yeah, just sort of think about it. But until next time, I'm Terry Bartley. Don't be afraid to tell your stories.